Hey crafty friends, this is Chelsea. Welcome to today's video. I have a bunch of new pretty things that I want to use, and I thought it would be fun to show you my process of how to start a scrapbook layout or any project really when you're starting with the inspiration of products instead of photos or your design. What does that process look like, and how is it different from starting with your photos? So today I am working with some Stampin' Up goodies. I have the Beauty of the Deep stamp set and dies, as well as Seaside Wishes. I have the hybrid 3D embossing folder for the Seaside Wishes as well. I'm very excited to use that. And then I threw in some embellishments. We have the flat adhesive-backed pearls. These are iridescent and so gorgeous. And then I thought it'd be nice to have some linen thread. This could add a nice little texture element to any clusters. I do think I'm going to want to do some clusters with all of these elements. That's kind of where my brain is going with these types of products, to have groupings of clusters that have these designs. I might also want to stamp some patterned paper to go along with this, because I'm using the Country Woods paper. I have one of these storage sleeves. These are from Amazon. I will link them below. These packs come just kind of like shrink wrapped, so I wanted something to store my paper collections in, and I really like how these are just open. I don't have to open a flap or anything, and they're nice and sturdy. They're sturdy enough. So here is what the wood grain papers look like. You get 2 of each. This is front, and then I'll flip it over so you can see the back. This could work for so many different things, but when I first saw it, I thought, man, that looks like beach. It makes me think beach, especially this one. And then there's another one here too. Beautiful, beautiful patterns. This one, doesn't that just scream beach to you? So I'm definitely going to use that one. I might use some of this teal one as well, or maybe work in some white. We'll see once we start like playing a little bit, but this was the original inspiration. I'm thinking beach. I'm thinking mostly this pattern with a little bit of other patterns, and I might want to stamp some cardstock with my stamps to have some coordinating kind of tone on tone cardstock to go with it. And then clusters of stamped embellishments. This kind of has like some rocks on it, so I could stamp those right on the base page, which makes me think I should probably choose either white or a light background color for my layout. So white or a light gray or a light brown, something like that, something that will match this paper. And then I could do some stamping right on my base page, and then also layer up stamped and die cut pieces. So these ones, I really like how they have ones that coordinate with stamps, but then they also have ones that are standalone pieces that don't coordinate with a stamp, but they help you build a scene or build a cluster. Like, look at that great detail. I can't wait to cut into these, as well as some like grasses, so they'll give us some height in our clusters. And then I also have this set, which this one is brand new, and this one is coming back from the previous catalog, but it's still available. And I like how we got this tall grass here that gives us some height, some breadth. This one also has standalone little like coral pieces that I think will look really nice in clusters. So I have tons of options for this layout. So my next step is to go ahead and find some photos. So I'm going to go over to my photo library on my computer, because I store all of my photos digitally. I don't have like printed photos organized in a photo box or anything like that. I just print on demand, since I have a really good home printer. So here is a look at my photo library. I have a Mac, so this is iPhoto. And I just scrolled over to my pictures from our recent Mexico trip, because I figured I got lots there that I can scrapbook, and I knew I had beach pictures. So I do have a separate folder that is photos to print. So as I'm looking for photos for layouts, I just drag them over and drop them in. It's just a copy of the picture that goes in there. I don't lose the picture from my main photo library. So I'm just picking a bunch. I'll usually pick more than what I actually need. especially if I don't have a design in mind and I don't know how many I need. I'll just pick all the ones from that particular event that I like and drop them in there. I also have another folder that is a photos to scrapbook. And if I'm going through my photos and I find things I haven't scrapbooked yet, I will drop them into there so that when I'm looking for photos to scrapbook, I can go to that folder as well and just look and see what I have on my to scrapbook list. Once I've decided on a grouping of photos, lots of times I will go ahead and just give them a light edit. I don't usually edit my photos a lot, but sometimes I need to brighten them up a little bit. Sometimes I will up the brilliance, the exposure, things like that. And then from there, before I start sizing things, I need to have a plan. Now at this step in the process, when I've found kind of the grouping of photos that I would like to scrapbook, before I start actually printing them, what I want to do is come up with a plan. So you might prefer to print yours and then just arrange them on the page, whatever like happens naturally with the sizes that you print. But I like using smaller photos too, and I need to be able to plan ahead to do that, to put them into a collage. So I have a couple ideas going on here. This is something I sketched out. I like using graph paper, and I just use like the Hilroy, just plain graph paper notebooks. And then I also like using friction pens. These are by Pilot, and because they are erasable, so I can jot down ideas. I have like little arrows, like maybe I should move this up, or I could add strips at the top. So this is not like a finalized sketch, but I can kind of see, okay, I want embellishments here, I want embellishments on this side over here, and another small cluster here. This is kind of what I was thinking for photo sizes. Either I could do a 6x4 or I could do 2 3x4s, depending on how many photos I want to fit on this page. I usually like to fit quite a few, depending on what the event is and how many kind of go in that grouping. I'd rather fit a few more photos on one 2-page spread than trying to do a second 2-page spread from the same thing. Now, I also toyed with the idea of if I should put a 4x6 photo here, or should I put my title and my journaling here, or I could put my title here. So you can see this is not set in stone, but it gives me some ideas. I also like to jot down maybe technique ideas, or if something comes to mind like, oh, you know, some background stamping or some ink blending or splattering would look really nice, I will write those down here as well. And sometimes this will happen at a totally different time. Maybe I just have ideas going through my head, or I saw something that inspired me, but other times it will be at this point in the process that I figure out a general plan, so then I can look at my computer and print my photos in the correct sizes. So I'll go ahead now, kind of figure out what I'm going to do and print my photos. So I went ahead and printed my photos. There were so many good ones that I wanted to use on this layout. And I also added some journaling on one of my photos. So I did this in the Project Life app, and I just went ahead, typed out my journaling, chose the font I wanted, and sized it. Now I did do one first and the size was off. It just looked too small, so I had to go back in and redo it, reprint it, which is the bonus of printing at home. I love my Epson EcoTank 8500. It does beautiful prints, and I have that flexibility to just reprint when I need to. For the pattern paper, I'm using that blue wood grain, and I cut it to a 1-inch strip. I'm doing that on both pages. I just thought it was a nice way to finish off that other pattern and kind of have a nice ending to it. Now, it was looking a bit heavy at the bottom, and so I thought I'd push this up and see if maybe having a bit of white at the bottom, I don't know, let it breathe, just kind of doesn't make it so heavy with the pattern at the bottom. And I really like it. I like having that little bit of white showing. Next, I wanted to match some cardstocks, both for cardstock and ink colors, to the pattern paper. So I have peach cardstock here from Close to My Heart. I don't really have much by way of Stampin' Up! Paper yet, so I'm definitely going to be matching a lot of my Close to My Heart cardstock. And I think the light side of peach looks the best. Now I was looking for yellow-green to match the green in my photos. That is Limeade, and it works really good. This is a retired color called Almond, and I think it's a pretty close match. Toffee is also a fairly good match, just depends if you want to go a little bit darker. And then this is Mint, which is another retired color. There's dark side and light side. I love having those two-toned options because it just gives you more colors to choose from. And I'm so glad that Stampin' Up! Is going to start carrying two-tone cardstock. Now I wanted to find a darker color to match that kind of brown gray. This is espresso, and I don't really like how it's matching. It's okay, I could get away with it, but it's not great. So I grabbed charcoal, which is a dark gray, and I like that better. It's cooler, and I think it's a closer match to that color. So now I need to decide what I want to do for photo mats. I think I definitely need photo mats on here. I am trying that charcoal color because I feel like my photos need some definition from the background to help them pop a little bit so they don't get lost. And I know I want to do quite a bit of embellishing, so I need something that's not too loud and crazy. I tried the mint, but I think it's going to be too much and too much color, and it doesn't really go as well with the blue in the photos. And white is always the right answer, right? So I thought, what if I double matte my photos? Do white and then charcoal. So white to make the photo pop, charcoal to make it stand out from the background, and I think that is going to be my winning combination. I went ahead and matted my photos off camera. You can see I'm also playing around with some other mats of pattern paper there. These two photos at the bottom, I decided to just do white because it was getting too much over there with the charcoal. And then that photo at the top, I actually reprinted it from the 6x4 into a 4x4 because I realized I needed more room for embellishing, because that's one of the things I want to do on this page is add a lot of embellishments. So I'm going ahead and I'm going to rip the bottom of these big pieces of paper. These were about 4 by 12 inches, so I'm making it just slightly smaller than that by ripping the bottom edge. I thought that was a really nice kind of distressed finish and helps it kind of blend into that white. Now I'm going to mark it here so that I have the rip kind of starting at the same height. So this will go across the two pages smoothly, so I don't have one that's really short and one that's really long. And then I'll just finish ripping that one all the way across as well. You may have noticed that at the top of my pages, I have little 1/2-inch strips of that kind of teal distressed wood grain. And then under both of the end photos on either page, I have that pink distressed wood grain and a little tiny scrap of the blue. It's the same blue that I have that 1 by 12-inch strip out of, but I used just the leftover scraps to add an extra layer there. I felt like it needed just a little something, and everything was getting very straight and very linear, and I thought by offsetting on an angle like this, it adds a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of movement on the layout. I'm bringing in a little piece from my title I cut on my Cricut just for placement because I want to make sure that I'm going to adhere my photo mats at the right height and leave enough room for my title. And I did make that title on my Cricut with one of my system fonts. I believe it's called Villi or something like that. It's a really pretty script font, and I just welded it together and then did an offset. This offset that you're seeing is in Dreamy holographic paper from Close to My Heart, and then I'm going to do the top layer for it in white cardstock, but I'm going to alter that as well, which I will show you. After adhering my photo mats, I decided now is a good time to add some ink to my background. So I'm using these large Post-it notes. These work so good for masking because they're so big. And I am masking off my photo mats, and then I'm going to bring in mint ink, which is a retired ink color from Close to My Heart, with a little blending brush, and I'm just going to start blending so that this bottom corner is the darkest, and then it will fade out from there. Now mint is quite a light color, so I'm going to have to layer it up a bunch to get it dark enough so that it's showing, but that's all right. I'd rather have to layer a lot than have a really dark color that it's hard to not get it too deep. Now sometimes when I'm going to ink blend on a background, I will go ahead and do that before I adhere my photo mats. And I could have done that here because I knew I wanted to add color to the background, but honestly, I didn't want to have to do the moving the picture, making sure I get the ink in the right spot and back and forth and back and forth. I think it takes longer sometimes than it does just to mask it off and ink it. You see how I moved this mask up to the top? I was getting a little bit of a harsh edge of where the mask was going beyond the paper, so I just lowered it a little bit, added some ink around that top corner just to soften any lines. There's a look at the other two spots of ink that I added off camera. Didn't want to make you watch me blend any more ink. And now I'm also going to do it on the title. So I just wanted to give you a quick look of how I left my Cricut cut on the mat, because with a delicate cut like this, it's so much easier to do it when it's attached to the mat and you have all the cardstock around it so it's not moving and ripping or anything. I'm only going to ink the bottom half of the title so I have like a nice ombre. It will stay white at the top. Now I'll spare you from the rest of the inking footage, and here is a look at the title. So I have that nice holographic background, and then my ink title will go over top. Now you might be wondering why I chose that holographic paper, because it doesn't really seem to go with anything else. Well, if you remember those pearls from the beginning of the video, they match this paper perfectly, and it was a great way to tie it all together. I adhered that title together with liquid glue, and then I popped it up on foam tape, and now I'm going to do some stamping and embossing. This is the Seaside Wishes bundle. So I have the stamps here that coordinate with the 3D embossing folder. And the reason I'm putting these on the outside of the embossing folder is because these two perfectly match the size and the design of those sand dollars. So I'm lining it up so I can put it into my stamp platform, put it up in the corner, grab it with those stamps, and then I can stamp on here with almond ink and get a perfect placement so that the coordinating dies will cut this out. So I can put this panel of paper right into the embossing folder, emboss it and cut it all at the same time. If you don't want to do this, you could definitely do one at a time and just stamp, die cut it out, and then run it through the embossing folder. That way it'd be easier to line up, but I thought I would try it this way. So I'm just double checking it here with the die just to make sure it's going to perfectly cut out, and it is. So I think the concept of this embossing folder is really neat. There's a little groove in there, so the die actually kind of nests in there. It doesn't click in or anything. It will pop out on you, so you have to make sure you have it lined up well. But it's so cool because you would think that it would cut through and cut the back side of the embossing folder, but it doesn't. So you can 3D emboss it and die cut it all in one pass. Right now I'm trying to perfectly line this up, and then I'm using the washi tape to adhere my cardstock in place to make sure that it's not going to slip on me as I send it through. It's a lot of pieces to line up. So I'm lining up the die, and then I put the paper side onto the die to make sure that the die is not moving on me. And then I'm going to put that through my machine with my regular sandwich for a 3D embossing folder. And there you go. It's embossed and it's die cut. You can see the third one there doesn't have a stamp. So I just did the other two. Those are the ones I'm going to be using. But doesn't that look amazing? The distressed look from the inking and then all that texture from the embossing. It just makes for really cool embellishments. So now we are going to start the embellishment process. So I have cut that other like round shape there from peach cardstock. That sea star is done in toffee ink, and then you can see I have a fish here in lagoon and a fish in melon ink, and the little starfish is in toffee. This little coral piece I actually cut from the pattern paper, which is a really good option if you're trying to find colors that match your papers, is to cut it right from the pattern paper. So I'm just going to start arranging everything. I've cut these little like seagrasses in limeade cardstock, and I want some height to my cluster. And I just start by placing my large sand dollar first and then working all the other little pieces around it. I'm using avocado, which is a nice yellow-green color, just a little bit deeper than limeade, to shade the bottom of these grasses. I thought they were looking a little bit flat and I wanted to give them some dimension, so that is my go-to way to do it. Small blending brush, and I'm going to blend about halfway up and just layer the ink until it's the depth that I want. I went ahead and did that inking to all my seaweed pieces. I'm going to have some in each of my 3 cluster areas, and then I'm going to mask off again, and this time I'm going to stamp in limeade this seaweed or seagrass image, and I decided to go a little bit higher. The bottom part is going to be hidden anyways with my sand dollar, so I'm going to stamp this a couple times. On this stamping, I didn't push down as hard as I needed to. I'm still working on practicing with the cling mount stamps. I haven't used cling mount stamps in quite a few years, so I'm still playing with how much pressure and how exactly to get the best impression. I'm going to stamp it once on this other side, and I used more pressure, and you can see I got a perfect image all the way down to the bottom. Doesn't really matter because it's going to be hidden anyways. I cut out this coral piece from some peach cardstock, and I'm just lifting up the corner of that photo to sneak this piece under there so I can add another layer. And then it's just a matter of bringing in all my little pieces, tucking them behind each other, making sure anything that I don't want to be seen is hidden. This other round shape is in melon cardstock, which is a nice kind of complement to peach that's just a little bit darker. I have another one of those pieces of coral that's cut from the pattern paper, another starfish, and a fish that's also stamped in melon. Now here I used the linen thread and made some little circles. And how I attach these is I put foam tape under my sand dollars and then just stick the thread into the foam tape, and that keeps it attached. And I will repeat that in each of my 3 clusters. I love that kind of extra texture that it adds and a little bit of a rustic feel too. At this point, I feel like I'm getting pretty close to having everything the way I want it. The one thing that's really missing for me is some more words. So I dug into my stamp stash and pulled out this set, which was from the Hawaii incentive trip from 2022. And then I also pulled out my decorative shaped dies because I figured the little banners with the stitching on them would make a perfect little spot for some words. So I wanted to balance it out. I put another little banner piece up here. I'm not going to stamp on it, but I just wanted to have another banner somewhere else so to tie it all in together. And I did use one of the wood grain pattern papers for this. It was light enough with mostly white on it that I could stamp. I'm stamping in espresso ink. And I really liked this saying, "You can find me at the beach." But once I stamp it out and with the size of the banner and then it's right across from the title, I just didn't like how it was looking. It kind of looked too much, too big, too much. So this little stamp is from the same set. It says unplug and recharge. And I stamped it on a smaller banner and that worked much better, I think. And now I am going in with this little splatter stamp or little bubble stamp from one of the sets, and I'm going to stamp that with mint ink at first. You guys probably can't even see it. In person it was pretty subtle, so on camera it's probably non-existent. So I went and grabbed Lagoon, which is a little bit darker of a teal color, and I'm going to go around and add those. You can definitely see those ones. And I'm just going to add them here and there all around my clusters. And I like that little bit of extra detail that it adds to the background. I had also thought about adding some splatter, but I decided these stamps were enough. And then for the part that's going to pull it all together and add that little bit of bling and really tie in the title are these flat pearls. I think flat pearls are genius for scrapbooking because you get the beautiful shine of the pearl without the dimension. Lots of times pearls are really high and they make your layouts kind of bumpy. So these have 2 different sizes. You have a larger and a smaller, which is great for adding little clusters like I'm doing here. I'm setting these very lightly on my page, and then once I'm happy with where they are, I will go back and really press them down onto my page. If you want to, you can also add a little bit of liquid glue to make sure they stay put. But once I bring it up here, you can see how gorgeous those are. They're so reflective, and I just think they're the perfect touch to these clusters and a good contrast to the really rustic, matte kind of feel that I have going on here. This is my first layout using mostly Stampin' Up! Product, and I have to tell you, I am so happy with it. I love how this turned out, and I just want to make more pages with this. Now, if you're ready to learn more about how to start a scrapbook page with your photos and avoid being overwhelmed, watch this video next. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.